Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, the longest government shutdown in U.S. history could come to an end tonight. That's if the House passes the Senate-reached deal to reopen the government in a final vote. Meanwhile, some House Democrats say they're ready to reject the deal. Will any Democrats defect and join Republicans to end the shutdown? Luis Martinez brings us the latest from Capitol Hill. The White House criticizing Democrats for shutdown losses. And President Trump doubling down on another fight, this one against the BBC. Mariotsu at the White House. Israeli settlers torch vehicles and attack Palestinians in the West Bank. Meanwhile, President Trump asks the president of Israel to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Jason Perry reports. Ukraine is seeking to buy 25 additional Patriot defense systems from the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is meeting his Ukrainian counterpart today during a G7 summit in Canada. Arian Pastar has the latest.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Kevin Hogan and for Tiffany Meyer. The House of Representatives is set to vote tonight on a bill to reopen the government. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the latest in the story from Capitol Hill.
Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to come out and say that we believe the long national nightmare will be over tonight. It was completely and utterly foolish and pointless in the end, as we said all along.
The House of Representatives will vote tonight on a bill to end the government shutdown. House Democrats continue to express their disappointment with the deal reached by Senate Democrats with Senate Republicans.
Senator Schumer could have blocked this if he had wanted to. And one of the challenges is, in addition to the healthcare premium spikes, it undermines the narrative that this was a Trump shutdown. We need fresh faces. We need new leadership. I have a lot of respect for Senator Schumer's 50 years of service.
House Republican leadership has made it clear who they think is to blame for the pain caused by the longest ever shutdown in American history.
Many American families who are made to go hungry over the last several weeks, our troops and other federal employees who are wondering where their next paycheck would come from. All of that's on the Democrats. Just never forget, they voted 15 times between the House and the Senate to close your government. And the Republicans tried every single day of the shutdown to open it, and we voted 15 times to do that.
And House Democrats insist that the shutdown was forced in order to address health care policy priorities that Democrats have.
Republicans have created a health care crisis all across America. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers closing all throughout the country because of what Republicans did in their one big ugly bill.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson also swore in Adelita Grijalva after she won the special election in Arizona to replace her late father, Raul Grijalva.
I really like this lady. She's going to be an excellent member of Congress. She's a great person. I just told her on the way in that she fills her father's shoes, or she's going to try. No one can.
No one can.
He was a giant around here, served a long time, served his state very well. I served under him in the Natural Resources Committee for a while and admired the way he did the work. He was tenacious. So she has a proud family legacy, and we're delighted to have her here.
Adelita Grijalva has promised that once she's sworn in, she will sign into the discharge petition to release the Epstein files. Her signature would push the discharge petition to 218 votes, a majority in the House, which would force a vote on the motion on the House floor. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The White House blaming Democrats for the effects of the government shutdown, and President Trump saying he has an obligation to sue the BBC for defamation. And we go now to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mariotsu, who's at the White House. Good evening, Mari. What's the latest from the White House about the government shutdown?
Kevin, good evening. Yes, the White House is saying that it's very hopeful that the government shutdown will end very soon. And President Trump is expressing his confidence that that bill will pass the House tonight and arrive on his desk. And in her briefing today, Press Secretary Leavitt even says that that bill could end up being signed by the president tonight. Meanwhile, Press Secretary Leavitt also lists all of the damages wrought by that shutdown. Take a look.
The damage caused by the Democrats with this reckless government shutdown cannot be forgotten. It is entirely the fault of the Democrat Party. Just look at the vote count.
The White House criticizing Democrats for the effects of the government shutdown.
Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have missed their paychecks. Tens of billions in wages and benefits were withheld, impacting vulnerable families. Millions of low-income Americans missed their SNAP benefits. Nearly 20,000 flights at airports across the country were delayed.
While some Democrats raise the possibility that a shutdown could happen again in January if they aren't able to get concessions on extending Affordable Care Act subsidies set to expire at the end of the year. Meanwhile, President Trump is doubling down on a different fight, vowing to continue with his threatened $1 billion defamation lawsuit against the BBC for editing his speech.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical, but it was very dishonest.
The BBC documentary aired just before the 2024 election, spliced clips taken 54 minutes apart to suggest President Trump incited violence, with BBC's CEO and director resigning on Sunday. Prime Minister Keir Starmer responds,
"Where mistakes are made, they do need to get their house in order, and the BBC must uphold the highest standards, be accountable and correct errors quickly. But I will always stand up for a strong, independent BBC."
While the White House says,
the president has made it very clear that this is a leftist propaganda machine that is unfortunately subsidized by British taxpayers, and he thinks that's extremely unfortunate for the great people of the United Kingdom.
Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying that Americans will see in the coming days what he calls substantial announcements about lowered prices of items like coffee, bananas, and other things that are not grown in the U.S. Kevin, back to you.
Well, certainly if that bill to end the shutdown is signed, that will be a much welcomed relief by many Americans for sure. Thank you for that update, Mari. And if the shutdown does end tonight, when will Americans feel air travel and food stamp benefits go back to normal? And what are the political consequences for Congress? Tonight on Capitol Report, hear from Mally Smith and Chet Love in a panel discussion. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern Time right here on NTD. And in the West Bank, dozens of Israeli settlers wearing masks attacked Palestinians and set vehicles on fire in local villages. Meanwhile, President Trump asks the president of Israel to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Footage released on Wednesday shows dozens of Israeli settlers wearing masks running through the gate of this dairy facility in a Palestinian village in the West Bank. The incident happened the day before when mass settlers attempted to break into this building but were unable to. The footage shows the Israeli settlers then setting multiple vehicles on fire on the property. The men also reportedly attacked Palestinian civilians, injuring 4 people who were evacuated for medical treatment. The director of the business explained what happened.
We instructed our employees to take shelter and look after their safety. Our employees locked themselves inside of our premises, and then the settlers started attacking the premises from the outside, throwing stones on the windows, and then started burning our trucks.
The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, said they dispatched soldiers to 2 separate Palestinian villages that had been attacked and said they detained several Israeli civilians. The IDF also condemned the violence. Tensions between Israeli settlers and Palestinians continue to remain high in the disputed territories of the West Bank. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, Hamas terrorists, along with the Red Cross, are continuing to search for the bodies of the 4 deceased hostages that remain in the territory. And on Wednesday, Red Cross vehicles drove through Gaza City as they prepared to enter an area beyond the Yellow Line in search of the hostages' remains. On the same day, Israeli forces said they killed 4 terrorists who had crossed the Yellow Line and posed an immediate threat to Israeli troops. And in another development, President Trump continues to ask Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is currently facing corruption charges and is the first sitting Israeli leader to take the stand as a criminal defendant. Trump said this to Herzog during his trip to Israel in October.
I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon?
And it received a standing ovation in Israel's parliament. And on Wednesday, Trump sent a letter to Herzog, once again asking him to pardon the prime minister while describing the charges against Netanyahu as, quote, lawfare. The office of the Israeli president responded by saying, quote, anyone seeking a presidential pardon must submit a formal request in accordance with the established procedures. Jason Berry, NTD News.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio continues meeting with G7 foreign ministers in Canada today. Ukraine's foreign minister is attending as well. Ukraine is seeking to buy 25 additional Patriot defense systems from the U.S. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastar has more.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is among the G7 officials welcoming Ukraine's foreign minister in Canada on Wednesday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently said he wants to order 25 Patriot air defense systems from the United States. Meanwhile, Canada has announced additional sanctions on people and entities involved in Russia's drone program. The measure will affect 13 people and 11 entities, including several involved in the development and deployment of Russian drones. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, Kiev is battling an alleged major $100 million corruption scheme. Anti-corruption authorities say they detained 5 people suspected of involvement in the alleged plot to control procurement in state energy enterprises. Ukraine's government is now being shaken up. On Wednesday, the country's energy minister resigned, while the justice minister was suspended. This comes after President Volodymyr Zelensky called for their dismissal.
I believe the justice minister and energy minister can no longer remain in their positions. This is a matter of trust. If there are accusations, they must be addressed.
The corruption in the energy sector comes as Russia keeps attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which brings blackouts across the country ahead of winter.
I was actually very angry after the shelling of the energy infrastructure because it turns out that our energy facilities are not protected for this year of the war.
The scandal also hurts Ukraine's bid to join the European Union. Fighting corruption is central to Kiev's goal for EU membership. Meanwhile, the fighting continues in eastern Ukraine. Officials say Russian drone strikes hit Kharkiv early Wednesday morning, injuring 5 people.
All our state emergency service units are currently working, first and foremost, to eliminate the consequences and extinguish the fire. Next, of course, we will clear the rubble and see if there are any people still trapped under it.
And Russian forces also keep advancing in the strategic transport hub of Pokrovsk. On Wednesday, Moscow said its troops have now fully encircled the city, while also making progress in close-quarter combat in 2 districts within city limits. Losing Pokrovsk would be a major blow to Ukraine. Russian media call the city the gateway to the Donetsk region, due to its location and geographical layout. Ukraine denies Russia's reports, however, saying Kiev's troops are not in the process of losing the town. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Stay with us. A 3-judge panel today heard arguments over whether a federal law that blocks funding for abortions can remain in effect. Arlene Richards breaks it down. And the Department of Homeland Security says more than 150 illegal immigrant sex offenders were apprehended during an operation in Florida. Secretary Kristi Noem says she wants the operation to be replicated around the country. Jason Blair reports. And a federal audit shows California issued thousands of licenses to drivers who didn't meet federal rules. Those licenses are now being taken away. Christina Corona brings us the details when we come back. Welcome back. A federal appeals panel heard arguments this afternoon about whether a law that ended Medicaid reimbursements for Planned Parenthood can remain in effect, while legal challenges continue. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
A 3-judge panel of the First Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments on Wednesday to consider whether to temporarily block a federal law that ended Medicaid reimbursements to health centers that provide abortions. Planned Parenthood is suing Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others with claims that the new law, which became active in September, violates the Equal Protection Clause of the First Amendment. They claim their clinics provide services to low-income populations, and the provision could force them to shut down or reduce their offerings.
Congress defunded Planned Parenthood using a set of tailor-made criteria intended to exclude Planned Parenthood and only Planned Parenthood from the Medicaid program.
The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed into law in July, includes a provision that bars federal funds from being used to provide abortions. Nonprofits like Planned Parenthood that received more than $800,000 in federal funding in 2023 are prohibited from receiving Medicaid reimbursements for 1 year.
Even before Dobbs returned the issue of abortion to the political process, Congress may make a value judgment favoring childbirth over abortion and implement that value judgment by the allocation of public funds.
An appeals court judge in August granted the government's request to pause a lower court's preliminary injunction that had blocked the law until after court proceedings would be completed. The judge did not hear oral arguments. The panel will now consider whether to reactivate the lower court's injunction. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The Department of Homeland Security announces that ICE arrested 230 illegal immigrants in Florida and says 150 of them are sex offenders. Also, a look at how DHS has been responding to ongoing accusations that ICE is arresting U.S. citizens during its operations. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says that 150 illegal immigrant sex offenders were arrested during a DHS operation in Florida. The sweep was called Operation Criminal Return.
These individuals were sex offenders, but not just sex offenders, they targeted children. These 150 individuals will be gone off of our streets. Our kids will be safer.
Noem says that the operation happened with the partnership of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and is a model the DHS wants to replicate across the country. And the DHS has recently reported an 8,000% increase on attacks and death threats to their personnel, and ongoing protests have been happening around the country against ICE since June. The agency is also facing ongoing accusations that American citizens are being targeted or accidentally arrested during immigration enforcement operations. Last month, Governor Pritzker alleged that children were zip-tied and American citizens were detained for hours during a raid at a Chicago apartment building.
Go after them, not the 130 people. Instead, they took everybody out of the building. They zip-tied the kids. They took some of the seniors and put them into U-Hauls for hours. And many of them U.S. citizens.
The DHS responded, calling the claim that children were zip-tied a hoax and that it's normal protocol across all law enforcement to briefly detain non-threats during certain operations. The department said individuals encountered were briefly and safely held, a standard practice for all law enforcement for their own safety and the safety of law enforcement as they carry out these dangerous operations. Securing non-targets decreases the likelihood of that danger and protects all involved. In July, an ICE officer responded to claims that ICE doesn't have premeditated targets and are just randomly driving around.
We have our targets, we know who we're going to pick up, and we have our plan beforehand. We don't just go out there and look for anybody.
Jason Blair, NTD News.
A staff member for an Illinois senator is accused of claiming to be a lawyer and falsifying an official form to get an illegal immigrant released from custody. The Department of Homeland Security shared security video of the accused staffer who works for Senator Tammy Duckworth. In a post on X, the department said the staffer claimed to be a lawyer for a 40-year-old illegal immigrant and falsified an official DHS document to get him released. A letter sent to Duckworth's office identified the staffer as Edward York. It also noted that the immigrant York was trying to get released had been deported to Mexico multiple times and has a DUI conviction. The letter requests a response from the senator's office by next week. Her office has not publicly responded so far. And thousands of commercial truck licenses are being revoked in California after a federal audit revealed several violations. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy demanded the action, calling the state's licensing system a threat to public safety. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
California has revoked 17,000 commercial truck driver licenses that were illegally issued to non-domiciled drivers. The move comes after a demand from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy in September. A federal audit found that 1 in 4 non-domiciled licenses in California were issued without meeting federal requirements, and some were valid longer than the driver's work permit allowed.
So in plain English,
This is a license to operate a massive 80,000-pound truck that's being issued to foreign drivers who are not U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents. The process for issuing these licenses is absolutely 100% broken.
The Department of Transportation says California's DMV violated federal regulations. In a post on X, Duffy accused Governor Gavin Newsom's administration of being caught red-handed after weeks of claiming they had done nothing wrong. Earlier this year, Duffy called several state systems a serious danger for travelers and announced 2 immediate steps.
Here's the bottom line. Non-citizens will not be eligible for a CDL unless they meet a much stricter set of rules. Second, all states must immediately pause the issuance of non-domiciled CDLs until they can comply with our new rules.
Notices have now been sent out to all affected drivers, and their licenses will expire within 60 days. Meanwhile, Nevada is taking steps to comply with the federal rule. The state DMV announced it will phase out non-domiciled or limited-term commercial driver's licenses and learner's permits, pausing new issuance and its renewals immediately. About 980 drivers statewide will be affected, and existing licenses will expire naturally based on their lawful stay. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Just ahead, FBI Director Kash Patel says that China has agreed to curb exports of fentanyl precursors into the U.S. But will Beijing follow through on its promises? Casey Fleming from Black Ops Partners joins us to discuss right after this break. Welcome back. FBI Director Kash Patel says that China has agreed to curb exports of fentanyl precursors into the U.S. That's what Chinese officials told him when he was recently in China. Let's unpack the meaning, or lack thereof, behind this with Casey Fleming. He's the chairman and CEO of Black Ops Partners Corporation and a national security advisor specializing in unrestricted warfare. Thanks for your input on this very important topic, Casey. It's evident that the Chinese regime historically has not been serious about ending fentanyl trafficking to the U.S. overall, but they have made this agreement. Well, what's most significant about that? That it could lead to some concrete steps in the right direction, or that they're admitting that they do have some control over the whole process?
It's actually both. For them to say, yeah, we're going to take care of it, we're going to cut it down, we're going to cut it back, says that they have control over it, even though they tell you they don't have control over it. Nothing happens in China without the Chinese Communist Party's knowledge and approval. Otherwise, it just would not happen, or you would be punished, if you will. So, you're no agreement that the Chinese Communist Party has ever entered into have they ever honored. So this is the same thing. They'll fade a little bit. They'll say, okay, fine. So for 90 to 120 days, you will see a reduction in the fentanyl, but then it'll slowly creep back. That's really their plan. Their overall strategy, they are in a war with the United States, not just drug warfare, which we're talking about here with fentanyl. That's only one of many, many methods of unrestricted warfare to weaken your enemy for complete takeover. So, we're dealing with an enemy who is at war, who has constantly named us, the United States, as their mortal enemy. So I would not look for anything permanent. They're just playing us just once again. And just look at the rare earths. They said, hey, look, we're going to do a temporary pause on the rare earth restrictions. And they said, okay, well, we're going to come back. Not even a week later, they said, hey, we're going to come back and we're going to hold about 3 of the most critical ones away from you, the ones that are things that's actually that it's playing out. Don't listen to what they say, watch what they do.
Right. So, Casey, just understanding your deep knowledge of this, that they're just playing politics. It's all words. Yeah, bring your dignitaries, bring your officials over like Kash Patel, tell them what they want to hear, wait for a little while, and then go on. I mean, this is tens of thousands of Americans that Kash Patel says that President Trump is trying to save from this fentanyl crisis, shutting off this fentanyl pipeline. Now, there is a well-known fentanyl supply line that goes through Mexico, but what may be lesser known to many Americans is Canada's role. The DEA has described these super laboratories that manufacture fentanyl and that cartels are capitalizing on. Give us insight as to what needs to be done here and what the president is doing.
Well, it all emanates from Wuhan, China, and they ship it to the western coast of Mexico called Michoacan, and then they use those drug cartels to make their money and distribute powerful, efficient distribution networks. There are also labs that receive the chemicals up in Canada, as you well noticed. But look at the bigger picture. Let's look at that number. And I think the American people need to understand what we're really talking about here. The federal government withheld really the true number, at least in the intelligence community. We believe the number to be double what has been reported in the past. The 77,000 that they talk about every year, which, by the way, just 77,000 is more than the Vietnam War in the entire time of the Vietnam War. That's just 1 year. So you look at it, it's about 125,000 to 140,000 per year, the actual deaths. And that typically that age range is in their 20s, which are a great way to get rid of and to murder military-aged young men and women. So if it's 120, 140,000, that's the equivalent of 2 737s crashing every day. And if you look at the last crash that we had, that was in the news or in the media cycle for at least 2 to 3 weeks, the one in DC with the Delta regional jet. Think about that. 2 of those going down every day. Why are we not hearing about those from our government and our mainstream media? So this is really what's going on, and people need to understand that's the number. Even if you look at the 77,000, that's the equivalent of 1 737 Airbus 321 going down every day, 365 days a year. That's a mental picture everybody needs to understand. So is this serious? You're absolutely right, it's serious. Is it politics? It better not be. Your enemy's at war with you. What are you doing about it?
Casey, I follow what you're saying, and President Trump's goal is to suffocate that whole ability for fentanyl to be manufactured and make its way into the United States. And you talk statistics. That's absolutely right. Every single person matters. Even Pennsylvania lawmakers are talking about how the grandparents have to raise the kids now because the parents died from fentanyl overdose. Just so sad. Now, Patel says the CCP is smuggling fentanyl in the U.S. to kneecap the country, something you were talking about, while detailing how the Iranian regime and Russia and the CCP, they're all collaborating with these cartels to get the substance into America through Canada. So what's the motivation field? I mean, well, it's obviously the adversaries trying to disrupt the American life and the American way of life.
The big picture is to weaken the United States because the propaganda that's out there that the United States is imperialistic, they control the world, it's the one world, the United States in charge of the world, and they're like tired of it. So you really do have a war going on. People don't understand it. The Chinese Communist Party has redefined what war looks like, and it's all these different methods to weaken the American people. And by the way, the ultimate goal is complete and utter takeover of the United States. The Chinese Communist Party has been in power since 1949, and they think it's their destiny to completely rule the world. And they plan on doing that by 2049, but they're on track to do it well before 2035, if you understand really what's going on behind the scenes. So it's all of their actions are for complete and utter takeover. And we've played into it. We've built this monster. We've put our supply chain, our manufacturing, our medicines, our pharmaceuticals, all in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. And just back in history lessons, back in high school, communism does not exist and cannot coexist with capitalism and freedom. They're mutually exclusive. So one of them is threatened by the other. And of course, communism is completely threatened by freedom. And communism is completely about surveillance and control. So that's really the end game here.
And Casey, we've seen the Chinese Communist Party murder their own people, even through threat of sanctions. We've seen them renege on political or geopolitical deals and trade deals, you name it. But can the trade leverage out of Washington keep the CCP accountable in ending this fentanyl crisis?
Yes, to a degree, but putting all your eggs into one basket, that's not the case. The Chinese Communist Party is hurting right now. As long as the American people keep buying Chinese products, it's going to prop up that economy. And so, the tariffs do help to a degree, but you already saw China says, hey, look, we're going to shut off rare earths. And they spent 30 years cornering the market on rare earths. They look so far down the road, and they are very smart and strategic people in the CCP. But you also have to know that they're a nothing more than a dark mafia corrupt regime. So that's who we're dealing with. And so, yes, they murder a lot of their own people. Don't forget, the Chinese Communist Party is responsible for double all other communist murders in history. So double that. Okay. So, and they have no trouble murdering their own people, and they have no respect for human life, as well as what you're seeing, all the different atrocities with the other races, the Uyghurs, the Tibetans, the Falun Gong, and don't forget the live human organ transplants. So and by the way, that's another word for live human organ transplants. Make no mistake, it's murder. So that's who we're dealing with. They're playing for all keeps. There's a quote that the CCP has: "We must live, you must die." And everybody needs to understand what we're up against.
So let's talk some action items here. The president is obviously taking his steps. Kash Patel going to China, doing what he can. The Bureau, of course, and the DEA tracking all these points in the supply chain, trying to shut it all down. What needs to be done to actually bring an end to this crisis?
The truth is, the American people need to take the matters into their own hands, meaning not by violence, but they need to stop buying Chinese goods and services. They need first start with anything that plugs in any kind of technology. And then the second thing is any consumables, makeup, food, any of that kind of stuff. You know, we have to make a personal choice to stop feeding this monster that's trying to kill our children, not just our children, but our way of life and our country. So that's number one. Leaving it up to the government has not worked. The government also, they're in for 4 years, then they're out for 4, and there's just too much turmoil to make things happen. And our adversaries know that. So if they can play the long game, they think that that's absolutely a win-win for a win, not a win-win, a win for them. So that's really what needs to happen. Honestly, it's up to the American people. Don't expect the federal government to be able to do much in the lines of any of this. They'll be able to get attention, but all this stuff is just window dressing. And listen, we've been doing this many years, and it doesn't change. It's every day is Groundhog Day. It doesn't change. And right now we're pushing for the American people with the Constitution in a peaceful manner is to take their country back and stand up against this enemy that's killing our families. Remember, 2 737s a day going down. That's just fentanyl. Then you've got nitazene, xylazine. You've got vaping products that are all laced with carcinogens. You've got marijuana products that are laced with carcinogens. That's all under just one area, which is drug warfare. And there's over 100 different methods. These guys are playing for keeps. And you'll notice that I'm going to be amping up the message very, very soon. You'll notice behind me, there's also a book coming out in January that's going to cover all of this.
Yeah, not to mention the huge profits that the CCP is making amidst all this. Thanks for your deep insight on this. Casey Fleming, we appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
A scam center, Strike Force, has been launched to target crypto fraudsters, who the U.S. Attorney for D.C. says are backed by Chinese organized crime. Here's Janine Pirro.
The consequence of these scams are devastating. Older Americans in particular are targets of these scams, many of them lonely, many of them looking to speak to someone who communicates with them. Their entire life savings gone, their retirement funds gone, left with no opportunity to go back into the workforce and to re-earn money.
Pirro said experts estimate that last year alone, Americans were scammed out of more than $9 billion from crypto fraud, and that's based on underreported numbers. She explained how the fraud usually works. A scammer will reach out through text or social media, gain the person's confidence, and convince them to invest. Pirro says that's why they have launched a scam center strike force to take down and recover stolen funds. She said they have the authority to charge foreign defendants and seize foreign property. So far, Pirro said they have seized more than $400 million And additional actions now underway will lead to the forfeit of $80 million more. And today with us, airlines say that flights continue to be impacted from a shortage of staffing. Though there are better numbers today, this comes as the U.S. House is set to vote on ending the government shutdown. And in college football, the latest playoff projections are out and clearly dominated by a single conference. Dave Martin joins us to discuss in a moment. Thanks for staying with us. Airlines report that flight delays and cancellations continued today, though there were much fewer than yesterday. This ahead of a U.S. House vote to end the government shutdown. NTD's David Lamb reports.
Flight cancellations and delays seem to be easing up during midweek, ahead of a vote to end the government shutdown. As of early Wednesday evening, FlightAware indicated that around 1,700 U.S. flights were delayed and nearly 900 were canceled. This compared to the 4,000 delayed and 1,200 canceled the day before. The House of Representatives is set to vote on a bipartisan bill that would end the current government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history. Despite the shutdown nearing an end, travelers are advised to anticipate further flight disruptions this week. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy recently said the agency is short 2,000 air traffic controllers.
And what we see with our air traffic controllers, good day today, if the House doesn't pass this bill, I think you're going to look at Saturday, Sunday, and Monday as tiddlywinks. It was beautiful. It's going to get much worse than that.
And combined with severe weather, this has caused tens of thousands of flights to be canceled or delayed since the shutdown began on October 1st. Duffy warned of consequences for air travel if the federal government did not reopen soon. David Lamb, NTD News.
Meanwhile, the northern lights lit up the sky in brilliant hues of green and pink across the U.S. last night. Stargazers captured time-lapse video last night of the colorful display over Iowa. The northern lights were visible far south of their usual range, even reaching southern U.S. states like Alabama and Florida, painting the sky above farms and small towns in shades of green and pink. The lights are caused by plasma ejected from the sun during a solar storm, interacting with the Earth's geomagnetic field. And there might be more coming. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration forecast a powerful geomagnetic storm over northern states between November 11th and 13th. And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in college football. As the latest playoff rankings were released last night, what stood out to you?
You know, I think the domination by the SEC in these rankings really stood out. If the playoffs started today or this week, 5 of the 12 teams that would get in were from the SEC. That's Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas. And actually a sixth, Oklahoma, is ranked ahead of both Miami and Florida, who would be in, but only because they would get their conference's single automatic bid. Now, just a reminder, the playoffs have 5 automatic bids, which are simply the 5 highest-ranked conference champions. They'll likely be, the 4 power conference winners and probably the group of 5 winner, probably the American Conference. And then the other 7 bids are just the highest-ranked remaining teams by this committee. Now, I wouldn't say there were any surprises, though, in the rankings. I will say this, I say this nearly every time, though. Now, these are just the second of 6 CFP rankings. Only the 6th and final one actually matters. I mean, these ones are really just here to show what the committee is thinking right now. They're really, other than that, they're useless. I mean, just the final one, like I said, actually determines the playoffs. And the committee has shown that they are not above switching teams at the last second. So really, Kevin, this is really just media fodder for us to talk about. But I enjoy talking about it.
Oh, man. Well, that's really tough work they're doing on the gridiron. I love watching them from my alma mater, too. But now let's move on to baseball news. Cleveland Guardians pitcher Luis Ortiz was in court today after his arrest Sunday. on charges related to sports gambling. What's the latest in the case?
Yeah, well, Ortiz, he pleaded not guilty today to the charges. They took bribes to help gamblers win bets on pitches that he threw. Now, he was released on a $500,000 bond. His next court date is November 19. Now, his teammate, who's facing the same charges, this is Emmanuel Clase. He was an all-star pitcher. He will be arraigned tomorrow. Now, prosecutors allege, at least in one instance, that Clase spoke to one of the bettors by phone just minutes before taking the mound in a game back in April. Soon after, the bettors won $11,000 on a wager that his pitch would be below 97.95 miles an hour. That's just his average speed there. So it sounds like a prop bet in that case. Now, in total, prosecutors allege these two players took payoffs from gamblers so that they could win upwards of $500,000. Now, one of Ortiz's lawyers denied the charges, saying the payments between his clients and the bettors were for legal activities. Now, of course, whether these federal, charges stick or not, baseball will do their own investigation. If they find them guilty, they're likely looking at, a lifetime ban from the game. Now, Major League Baseball, though, has announced that they're working with these gambling companies to put a $200 limit on these individual bets around single pitches to try to counteract this. But in general, Kevin, I don't recommend it's a good idea to bet on these games at all, of course.
Well, innocent until proven guilty. I mean, that's high profile, but not as high profile as what's happening in basketball. We know about that scandal that's going on, that alleged scandal. But here, look, let's talk about tennis news, Dave.
Sure.
Top-ranked Carlos Alcaraz beat Taylor Fritz yesterday in the ATP Finals to move him one win away from securing the season-ending #1 ranking. What is the significance of that designation?
Yeah, they've got their rankings all year long, but most players win it at the end of the season for sure. It usually just meant we had the best calendar year. Now in tennis, there's no end-of-year championship, but at least these ATP final tournaments are really as close as it gets. I mean, it's only for the top 8 ranked players in the ATP or in the world, really. But I think much more emphasis, though, is placed on each of the 4 Grand Slam tournaments. Now, right now, Alcaraz is ranked ahead of Jannik Sinner, not by a whole lot, though. Sinner, if he won the ATP Finals with Alcaraz losing the rest of his matches, Sinner would pass him. But let's actually listen to what Alcaraz said about that #1 ranking yesterday.
Well, at the beginning, I'm trying not to think about it, to be honest, but it's really difficult not to think about the #1 spot. At the beginning of the match, I thought a little bit about it, but during the match, there were a lot of things to think about, and the #1, the thought about the #1 was gone. I was, in my mind, I was thinking about how can I turn around the match, because I had really difficult moments, and I wasn't playing that good, I guess, or I just I didn't feel as good as the match against Immigrant, for example. So I thought about to find a way just to try to come back or to win a match. So. The #1 thoughts, I didn't think about it at all. During the match, I was just trying to get the win. How it is possible. Good that I got it, and obviously it was a really important step for classify to the semifinal.
So tomorrow, Jannik Sinner will face 3rd-ranked Alexander Zverev, and then American Ben Shelton will face Felix Auger-Aliassime. I think Alcaraz then plays on Friday.
Wow.
We'll see what happens.
Well, in tennis, they say you only have to hit one more ball than your opponent. Much easier said than done.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so now looking at tonight's NBA schedule, Dallas Mavericks play their first game since firing their general manager yesterday. What do you make of it?
I was kind of surprised that happened. I mean, the Mavericks were certainly, off to a slow start. There's 3-8 on the season. The fans have been very vocally unhappy since the now fired general manager Nico Harrison traded away Luka Doncic last February. And it really doesn't help matters that Doncic and Lakers are 8-3. And Doncic is off to an incredible start, averaging 37 points per game, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. He would actually be in the top 15 in all 3 of those categories had enough games to qualify. He missed 4 games with injuries. Meanwhile, the Mavericks, they've had some very bad luck since this trade happened. I mean, Anthony Davis has only been able to play in 5 of possible 11 games this year, and last year just 9 out of a possible 32 because of injuries. Kyrie Irving, meanwhile, tore his ACL. They were really counting on their 2 All-Stars to carry this team. So, I mean, if it's for the start this season, it seems like it's a little soon to already fire someone over that. If it's for the Luka trade, it seems like almost a little bit late for that one. Maybe it's just try to get these fans to stop chanting, the fire at Nico. I don't know if you saw the fire Nico signs that I showed up there, but Dallas, the fans are not happy still that Luka's being dealt. It just makes it that much worse that he's thriving with the Lakers right now.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, they got to just regroup, get on their ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they got to get some players back. They got to regroup, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Dave, thanks for this awesome update.
Thanks, Kevin.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kevin Hogan. Good night.